Got a full complement of troops here. Oh yeah, looking pretty good. Okay. Righto, ladies and gentlemen, let's get back into it. Mrs. Tangiora, there's no sign of her at the moment, so I suggest we go to the next presentation, which is Sport Hawke's Bay with Mr. Colin Stone. And Kevin, welcome. Gentlemen. The usual story, 10 minutes. I'll tell you when 8 minutes are up. And if you want us to ask some questions, please sure. give us a moment or two. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity of presenting. This hopefully won't be too long. I just want to talk to you a little bit around regional events and the notion we have, I guess, from our perspective of developing a regional underwrite fund. So this is not a bid fund. This is not fund to be used to win events. It's an event, or it's an event fund to support events that are coming to our region. Now, I'll make the point now that no event should be run to sort of lose money, but it's certainly what seems to be missing in the region is sort of what I would call a regional safety net. So running big events that have an impact on GDP or economic return do often come with high risk and required sort of regional leadership, I guess, from our perspective, is the designate of local authorities with Hawke's Bay Tourism. So this is a plea from us as Sport Hawke's Bay for the local authorities to work together on this discussion. Firstly, we'd like to acknowledge and applaud the sort of regional drive and coordination that's happening now about winning events, and it's great to see, and it's refreshing to see. Sport Hawke's Bay, as you probably are aware, carried out an economic impact study for what turned out to be the top 19 events in Hawke's Bay a couple of years ago. And what that showed was, and don't ask me why it was 19, but it ended up being 19. What it showed was there was an economic return, a financial return of 47 million to the region, and a GDP return of 20 million on those 19 events. But what seems to be missing, as we mentioned before, is this underwrite fund. So this is a regional pot that kind of acts as a safety net for Hawke's Bay region. Clearly there's a lot of discussion to go ahead before this takes place. So questions like, how big's the fund, who contributes, who gets to support the support of the underwrite fund, what's the mechanism, all those sort of questions still need to be answered. So again, the point of our submission really is to get us thinking regionally around the use of this regional fund. Whether an organisation is a professional event organiser, an incorporated society or a regional sports organisation, for example, not for profits, then why on earth would anyone run an event that has a return for the region when they put themselves under so much stress, both financially but also personally? So certainly from Sport Hawke's Bay's point of view, I'll use the example of the Wellington Phoenix game that was held here in over Labour weekend last year, which Kevin, our commercial manager who sits on the event management or the event strategy working group, was part of. This was an event brought to Hawke's Bay. Sport Hawke's Bay didn't want to own it or take the risk. Central Football, the governing body of football, didn't want to own it and take the risk. The Napier City Council, whose facility it was in, didn't want to own it or take the risk, and neither did Hawke's Bay Tourism. So in the end, through one of our partner trusts, the Team Hawke's Bay Trust, an underwrite fund of $90,000 was put together through the support of some philanthropic Hawke's Bay companies. Otherwise, the event wouldn't have taken place. The end result was that the event broke even. Nobody lost any money. Nobody died. But the region was better off by $660,000 as a result in terms of a contribution towards GDP. So the notion really is having a safety net, having a pot that can really support these key events is where we would like to foster some discussion by local authorities.
In that particular event you talk about was no one scored either.
And nobody scored either, but it was a great game.
So just so I'm clear, you're saying we need to think regionally about this as a potential solution to some of these issues. You're not actually asking us for cash here today.
No, I think it's we want to use our submission to foster discussion. That discussion may not involve Sport Hawke's Bay. We see this as being a discussion that needs to be led by local authorities in terms of what the pot looks like and how it gets used, etc., and what the rules of engagement are really. But clearly the region benefits where we get big events like Horse of the Year, like the Phoenix Game, like the All Black Test, etc. The region benefits. And we need to think regionally and collaboratively.
Absolutely, and we've got other activities happening this year. Councillor Pipe, then Councillor Belford.
You mentioned the Phoenix Game and that it broke even. Looking back in history, would there have been other events that maybe would have benefited from this underwriting fund?
Well, certainly over the years, and I don't know the results of this year's event, but certainly, I think it's well known that the Horse of the Year show ebbs and flows every year, depending on the weather and all sorts of other circumstances. So, I mean, that's an example of an event, I guess. Kevin, you may well have more.
Yeah, I mean, even in the current environment around the country, there are a lot of councils considering the underwrite option rather than just forking out money and giving it to a promoter. And even as recent as the Hurricanes game and even the All Black Test here, when you look at the investment that the Napier City Council have put into it, it's more of an underwrite, not necessarily giving cash to bring the game here as such. And I think that it is a bit of a trend, because if the promoter or the organiser of the game has got a decent budget that is manageable and achievable, they really just want to have the confidence that they can get the game to the park or to actually have it happen. And it's more having the confidence to actually deliver the game. And that's often what we haven't got.
To use an example, Mr. Chairman, why would an organisation like Basketball Hawke's Bay, for example, who struggle to make ends meet to run themselves, why would they take on the risk of running a national basketball tournament that has that might bring 500 or 600 people to the region for a week, mums and dads and everybody else as well, an age group event? Why would they do that and take the risk and take all the stress for the good of the region? So this is a regional way of supporting those types of organisations.
3 minutes left. Councillor Belford.
Yeah, I just wanted to have a better sense of what you meant by risk. So if somebody budgeted out an event, assuming a revenue stream from whatever ticket sales or what have you, what you're saying is that this money is not filling a budget gap, which would be underwriting or a sponsorship or whatever. It is fronting the money, or is it guaranteeing a certain revenue?
Yeah, it's a guarantee.
It's a guarantee of revenue that's been properly projected, prudently projected, I guess I should say.
Exactly how the Phoenix game was produced, and the Hurricanes game to a large degree. It's the same sort of model.
So in theory, the pot shouldn't get touched.
But a revolving fund.
Yep. So things like, for example, if an event makes money but it's had the luxury of having the pot sitting there, is there a split of profit that goes back into the pot? All that stuff needs to be worked through.
It is. This discussion has been touched on at the regional events strategy group with Hawke's Bay Tourism. So it's not, we're not bringing it from left field. It's just, it has been discussed, and Colin thought it would be good to be able to lead it.
Councillor Scott.
If you saw ratepayers' money being used in underwriting it, would the body, such as Regional Council, have the final say in which events would go ahead or not? Because you only have to look at the debacle of the V8s in Hamilton, the Los Angeles something or other game with Mr. Beckham.
Well, I mean, the regional event strategy group, if it's going to have a meaningful purpose.
If the council were the underwriter, would they have the final say as to which events they'd underwrite?
Have to be negotiated, I suppose. I mean, at the end, there needs to be a group to identify what events you want to support, and then along with that is all the process of how you go about allocating the fund.
Councillor Bevan.
I know you've come to us with an in-principle proposal that needs to be discussed more widely, but these sorts of in-principle things always come down to money. Do you have in mind the size of the sum that you might need to be ready to put up to fund the sorts of or to underwrite the sorts of activities you're talking about here?
I mean, from event to event, if you look at what we've had regionally, if you take it alongside the Hurricanes or the All Black Test, you're not talking more than probably about 300,000. But it depends on whether you want to be limited to a figure and to the size of the events that you want to attract. I mean, we've got a team from Napier going over to the World International Children's Game in December. Well, I mean, that event has a large amount of money to invest into it. So, I mean, I don't know if you'd want to put a limit on it, but, I mean, it will need to be talked about. But we haven't got a figure that we're bringing to the table right now.
Last question, Councillor D.
Oh, thanks, Colin. Hey, Hastings District and Napier City have both got events coordinators, promoters, as have Tourism Hawke's Bay.
Yep.
Do they relate to any sort of coordinating body? You mentioned some.
The Regional Event Strategy
Yeah.
Group. We sit together and meet.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, like with the economic development practitioners, or coalescing to Business Hawke's Bay, you're running things in that same manner.
It's under the model of Hawke's Bay Tourism.
Under Hawke's Bay Tourism. Okay. And is it working?
It's been more active than what it has been. I mean, the regional event strategy has been talked about and has been in place for about 2 or 3 years, but over the last 6 months we've had regular meetings, even down to weekly, up until recently when Roger King, the Napier City Council event coordinator, he's finished, he resigned a couple of weeks ago, so they're in the process of putting a new person in there. So, I mean, we've had some more discussion and more everyone around the table being on the same page than what we have ever.
Okay. So they're basically working collaboratively.
Correct.
Thank you. And thank you, gentlemen. That's time up, but very thought-provoking, and thank you for your presentation. So, thank you. Right. Now, Councillor Mister. Goodness me. That was a faux pas, wasn't it? Ex-All Black Tim Gilbertson. Welcome. So you 3 minutes, no, 10 minutes starting.
Three will do.
10 minutes with the microphone on, and good to see you back.
Thank you.
Tim.
Good afternoon, everyone. I wasn't intending to make a submission, but about a month ago, 1 cat and 7 kittens walked from underneath my woolshed across the road to the gun club, and I flew into a rage and started hoping that terrible things would happen to certain people in the universe. And then I thought, why bother? Why not actually, trek up here and ask you people to do something about it? And it's quite apposite because in this morning's Dominion, which you all have read, the Australian government wants to develop a biological agent capable of mass cat destruction after a study showed that native wildlife has been badly damaged by 20 million wild cats, which kill and eat 75 million mammals, birds and reptiles every night. Well, I imagine that's a bit of exaggeration, but that basically gives you the scale of the problem. Your staff response is that you're going to contain the cats in the countryside by having a $2.50 a hectare by controlling cats and mustelars, etc., etc. That's exactly what you did with possums 20 years ago, and I well recall at Potongata, 4,000 possums were killed on Mangatapuri and St Lawrence Station on in a controlled killing of possums. It hadn't occurred to the council that north of the Potongata Bridge, upstream of the Potongata Bridge, there was 50 acres of hectares of forest, and the possums said that's a nice lunch, and they'll move down the road, and all the locals thought that was pretty strange behaviour by the regional council. So it looks to me like 20 years later your proposal is to replicate that. You'll go around killing cats, the locals will come and drop off the cats on the way to the beach. You killed 58 cats at my place 2 years ago in a controlled experiment, well basically not my place, on 1,000 hectares between the Potongata Bridge and the confluence of the Waipoua and Tukituk rivers. So, if you look at what the Aussies are doing, what your proposal is, it's not very effective. Seeing I'm here, I put a whole lot of other things in, but the other thing was erosion control and soil conservation. Your staff response is that there have been 2,000 hectares of poplar poles planted. That's actually wrong because I assume that says 100% survival. The survival rates generally, a good survival rate in our country is probably 50-60%. So again, 97,000 poles planted in CHB, I would, from my experience, say that you'd be lucky to get a 50% survival rate. In the drought 2 years ago, I planted 600 and got naught. So, again, your information's incorrect. So, I just reiterate that your response to hill country erosion has been pretty lamentable. And, again, every winter the Tukituk runs for at least 2 weeks. And on different occasions with mud in it, we turn off the pumps for 2 weeks because the dirt coming down those rivers, which they've been doing since the flood of 1863, has not really changed. So again, I challenge you to actually do something about it, and I think the staff response is pretty inadequate. The rest of my submission is pretty well self-explanatory, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbertson. Any questions? Councillor Hewitt.
Nice to see you. I need some help with feral cats because your mother's enlisted me to take up where you've left off the other day.
I think I'm possibly representing her as well, so I should have mentioned that. Yeah.
If you can elaborate some more, then that would be great.
Some more.
As in what we can do for Central Hawke's Bay.
Well, I just had this conversation with a 90-year-old cousin of my mother's about an hour ago when I said I was coming here to tread the boards. And he said, well, they've done that with dogs. Why can't they apply the same system to cats? Why can't you register cats? Oh, the other weakness in your submission is you don't have the power to do whatever you're going to do. You don't have the authority to regulate, to register cats. Well, my advice is to do what everyone else does, put pressure on the government to treat cats and dogs the same. And the other thing I said, I was in Samoa many years ago and staggered out of the pub at 3 o'clock in the morning, got attacked by a pack of rabid dogs, which was because there were no dog control in Samoa in 1980, so they were just running wild in the streets, which is exactly the situation you have with cats as far as I can see. They don't bite people yet, but if you had the similar situation for cats as you do for dogs, there'd be packs of dogs running around. So it's not rocket science. I mean, you just pressure the government, or someone does, to do that, because you must admit, well, I think you should admit, that you're totally wasting your time and ratepayers' money if you're just going to go around killing the odd cat and doing exactly what you did with possums 20 years ago. You solved the possum problem by having a blanket ban, getting the legislation in place, or someone did, and the problem was solved. But you just, as you've done for years, I mean, if Gareth Morgan's sort of the guy in charge of it, he's taking your job, he's stealing your thunder. Well, that's your job, that's what you should be doing. Does that answer your question, Councillor, at all? Well, just treat them like dogs. Have a very similar situation as you do for dogs. Registration, control, fines, etc., would be my answer to your question. And I will either long-winded way, I apologise.
Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you for that. I was kind of breathless for a while there, Tim, but we're on to cats, mate. Just to assure you, we're on to cats. Now, your second subject, I'm not so au fait with, but your first one, cats, just leave it in our hands. We'll get those kittens as well.
Finn. So you're talking about Lake Hatuma there. Do you realise that what DOC owns is a very small slither and it's going back to the treaty group?
Well, I'd question that. I've looked at the map. I reckon they own about a third of the lake.
Well, that'll be good, so we'll get more eels.
Well, I just think it's an excuse. I think, to be honest, I look at Peka Peka, and I think that's handy. It's down the road. It's nice for the staff. They can whip down there, and it's right by the road, and it's good PR. You spent $2 or $3 million on that, and there's been absolutely no effort to do anything about how to. And the excuse is, it's private, and this or that. Libby Walker years ago threw a spanner in the works. It's all that. It's the too hard basket. Well, you've got 600 acres there, and nothing's been done for 30 years ever since. Someone's on the submission always sprayed a few willows. Whoopee. Again, that is potentially a jewel in the crown, and nothing's been done about it. So I just think that, again, it's like the too hard. I mean, you're saying, we can't do anything about cats because we know we can't legislate for that. Well, someone should get off their backsides and do it.
No, what I was trying to say is that once the iwi get the ownership back, they'll be able to, get you on the board and get something going.
I'm flattered, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any other questions? We have 3.5 minutes remaining. Councillor Hewitt?
No one else does. Tim, I'm wondering if you can perhaps tease out the coastal erosion issue that we have down in our neck of the woods and some more solutions as well, because I know that was a pet subject of yours and it might help enlighten my fellow councillors. Well,
I used to pound the table and rant and rave when I was around this table and other tables. I mean, in the 1960s, and this I go back to Neil Faulkner, who started in the 60s, the catchment board had quite integrated programs where you had debris dams, flood control dams, possum control and retirement planting. And when I was a kid, my father was part of that program. We've been planting poplar poles since 1957, so half a century later. And that integrated management actually worked. And we had 400 acres at the back of Oteka, and that was after 10 or 15 years of concentrated work that was stopped the erosion. It used to rain, it would just pour down the gullies down to Polari, and now it's stopped. Well, that program was stopped years ago. In 2004, when I was the mayor of Central Hawke's Bay, there was the big flood out there. Well, it was pretty obvious even that the gullies with a few trees in them were basically unaffected. All the rest were wiped out. The 2011 flood, was it, the other day? I went to Shoal Bay the other day. I went to Poiri, I went to Karakau, and nothing's happened. 3 or 4 years ago, nothing's happened. 20 years. Those places have been farmed for 150 years, and it needs a partnership between the council, because I ordered poplar poles. I'm 60. I turned 60 the other day. I might not look that, but I've ordered 300 poplar poles. I would get out there and plant them. Well, last year, because I got a bit tired, I didn't plant them until August. Got dry. Half of them have died. And I said to these guys, "Can you supply someone to plant?" "Oh, we might." There must be some 20-year-olds around there that like some pocket money to come and plant poplar poles. Or you, Mike, young fellow like you, councillor. But in 1863, the big flood altered the Nullaroa and started this whole process off, and everyone cut down the 90-mile bush, etc., etc. Well, not a hell of a lot's been done in the last 150 years. And when I got onto this council, I thought I might, well, every council, but it's your fundamental core job, and that goes back to the railway line. Do the railway line, but get back to your basics first. Just drive from here to. I drive, as I said hundreds of times. I drive from here to down the middle road, and in 25 years I've lived down there, I would say 15 poplar poles have been planted. There's just vast areas that no one's done, and the farms aren't going to do that because they've proved they haven't. With incentive they'll do it, but they're sort of sitting there saying, "Oh, one day I've got other problems. I'll go to the beach in the middle of winter and I'll get out and plant poplar poles or construct debris dams." Someone's got to do it, and the only people that will do it, and the people that have the prime responsibility for it, are you guys.
Is it true you're standing for mayor again?
I've been talking to Lawrence. No.
Councillor Scott.
Mayor of what, Mr. Councillor? I'm not Tim Shadbolt. Call me Shadbolt.
Right, we're getting down.
You were on the council at the time we considered the afforestation program and the reasons why that got put on hold. If you were so much in favour, are you in favour of the ratepayers funding this? So you would like to see rates increase to cover that. Is that correct?
It's interesting you bring that up, because that was done when carbon was $1.76. It's now up to $5, so it's quite becoming more economic. Yes, I'm happy to increase rates, to pay rates, to have rates paid, to encourage and subsidise repair and planting, all that sort of thing. That's no problem at all. And that's, as I said, I'd much rather you did that than put money towards the railway. So yes, if you're doing your core job, I'm happy to pay rates for it. I'm not happy to pay rates for things that don't work, like farming feral cats and building railway lines that are not the responsibility of the council. It's a central government responsibility.
Thank you,
councillors.
That on a farm, that it's our responsibility as a council to put poplar poles and to. I thought you said that to
encourage and promote.
Oh well, I'm pleased you clarified that, because I would have thought that any business owner's responsibility to protect his business is his own, and we can help where we can, but it's not our responsibility.
I'll clarify. It's a joint responsibility. No, I'm not saying it's your responsibility to come onto my farm and put poplar poles. No, I'm saying it's your responsibility, and you make me pay money towards you to protect the environment.
Thank you. And thank you, Tim Gilbertson.